Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Project Pro AI Monetization Podcast. I'm Binny, the co-founder of Project Pro. On this podcast, we speak with industry leaders on what kind of business use cases and ROI they are seeing with AI. Today, we have with us Gary. Gary has deep specialization and expertise in the supply chain, specifically the transportation part of the industry. Gary is the Vice President of Transportation at Weber Logistics. Weber is the leading logistics provider on the West Coast, has been operating for over 100 years, and has evolved into a nationwide provider of logistics solutions. Before that, Gary was the president and founder of K2 Consulting and Advisory Services, providing advisory on logistics and supply chain. And previously, among his many roles, most recently, Gary was the vice president of operations at Pacifica Trucks. And when we were just catching up before this recording, Gary also mentioned that he spent some time working on AI research back in college in the 80s. Gary, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time to do this.
Thanks, Benny.
Awesome. Gary, to begin with, we're all very curious. Your role in trucking as vice president. What is your mandate and what are your priorities in your current role?
So first and foremost, we're a for-profit business. So my mandate is to make a profit on what I do. So that's always the mandate of any business, and anybody who tells you any different is wrong. But in my role and I've got a fairly decent sized group of people that report into me, whether it's truck drivers or dispatchers or managers, et cetera. But my mandate as not only as a manager but as a leader is to make sure that team has the best tools possible in order to do their job most effectively. Obviously there's the component of, well, I'm in charge of a P&L and a budget and all that kind of stuff, all the money part of it that goes with it. But in my role also, I help out the business development team. So when we're bringing on new business, I act somewhat as a sales engineer to help them using my knowledge of logistics and transportation. But my primary role is to constantly look for efficiencies, process efficiencies, in order to eliminate kind of the Lean Six Sigma, reduce the waste and replace it with something better. So I've got a saying that's I'm always striving for better, faster, and cheaper. If I'm driving to work in the morning and I know that there's traffic, I'm going to avoid the traffic as much as possible because I want to get there faster. So that's better, faster, and cheaper. I'm spending less gas. So
That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah.
What would you say are your top burning problems or challenges in either your role or broadly in the industry or Weber?
So I think in my role, kind of in general in this role,
Yeah.
so we're in a very competitive environment.
Uh,
There are lots of people out there that are third-party logistics. There's lots of transportation companies out there. So the biggest challenge is differentiation. That's how do we differentiate ourselves from what somebody perceives as a commodity? I can, I can roll out of bed tomorrow, buy a truck, and I'm in the trucking company. So, we compete with people like that. We compete with national, global companies who are also in the same space. So the real big challenge is differentiation. How do we differentiate ourselves from other people, from other companies? And that's my primary challenge. The other challenge too is it's really more of a marketing challenge, if you will. There are lots of people that would buy a 3PL product, whether it's warehouse distribution, trucking, all the different modes, all the different specialties, et cetera. There's a lot of people that would buy that, and so just making sure that we're at the forefront of that. Of that appeal, whether that's a marketing thing or reputation, word of mouth, but making sure that we're there.
yeah.
Um,
That's it. And when it comes to differentiation that you said, and that's a great point, are the long customer relationships, is that one part of it, or is it
Yeah.
on time, cheaper? Is that part of it? Like, what are some of the big levers when it comes to differentiation of the business?
Well, so this is a relationship business, like any other service. It's a relationship business.
Hmm.
It's who you know, and who knows you.
Hmm.
Um, and that's what gets you in the door.
Hmm.
But what you what keeps you in the room is execution.
Hmm.
So if it could be your best friend from college, but if you don't do a good job,
Yeah.
they're going to fire you. They still may be your friend, but
Yeah.
they're still going to fire you because you're not executing. So the one thing, a few things that are very important in this business is you keep your pledge. And your pledge is, did I pick it up on time? Did I deliver it on time? Did I process it correctly?
Yeah.
Did I ship it on time? Did I do all the things that you expect me to? And even to the extent of, did I exceed your expectations? If any company does that, then they've got a lot of good customers, because
Yeah.
those customers won't go away.
Yeah.
And that's really all it is. Now, there's a price component to it, of course.
Yeah.
You can do all the great things, but you can be the NVIDIA of 3PL, where everything that you do is the most expensive. Um, or you can be the other one that, you can be the AMD, if you will, and have a product that's somewhat cheaper, does most of everything that you ask for, but just doesn't do it as fancy as the other one.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. You know, given Gary, you kind of, apart from being a trucking leader, you also
Yeah,
have strong interest on technology, AI, and quantum computing. Do you think
sure.
that gives you a unique perspective every time you see an inefficiency that you stumble upon? Do you see it with a different lens? How do you process it?
Yeah. So here's my approach to that, and it's a little snarky, but my approach is, I'm very lazy. And what I always want to do is, I want to take if I was a completely lazy person, but I wanted to be very efficient and effective at the same time, what would I do? My co-pilot, if you will, not to coin anybody else's phrase, my co-pilot, if you will, is technology. So just recently undertook a project, where we have a lot of manual processes, in particularly in trucking and transportation. We still live in Excel workbooks or Excel spreadsheets, um, uh, and we have 10 million emails coming in and out. If I could fix that by automating those processes, that's the lazy man's approach,
Yeah.
right? Now I don't have to read an email. Now I'm not creating another Excel spreadsheet. So technology is my co-pilot,
Yeah.
whether that's RPA, or that's some other form of process automation.
Yeah.
Then sign me up for that.
Mhm. Got it. Makes sense.
So that's how my brain works. I'm always thinking, how can I be more efficient? How can I do more in a span of time? Funny you asked the question too. Is that I was just this morning I was thinking, my tendency is I try to do more than one thing at the same time. I don't mean to get too personal, but it's things like, can I drive and text at the same time without, causing any problem? So I'm always thinking along those lines,
Got
because
it.
if I can compress tasks
Mhm.
into a smaller window and still be effective, still be efficient,
Yeah.
still exceed expectations,
Yeah.
then I'm doing a really good job.
Very nice. I really like the way you kind of put this earlier. Can you keep your pledge? That was pretty powerful, I thought, the way you put that. And in that value chain, Gary, can you pick it up on time? Can you kind of transport it safely? Can you deliver it on time? Can you exceed
Sure.
expectations that you said? And then you also mentioned about a ton of paperwork and Excel sheets in the business. Could you maybe help us understand what are these workflows that generate so much paperwork and Excel sheets? Some examples of that would be helpful.
Sure. I mean, I'll try to give you as basic example as possible.
Okay.
So let's just say, let's say a truck arrives to a warehouse,
Yeah.
and the truck is delivering goods,
Mhm.
right? There's boxes, there's pallets, there's all kinds of stuff. It's in the trailer. It's got to come out.
Yeah.
But before that happens, there's a piece of paper that the driver has.
Mm.
And that piece of paper usually is a bill of lading, something that says, here's what I've got for you. And it's got all the requisite information like a PO number or pieces. So hands a piece of paper to the dock, and the dock puts it on a clipboard. And then as they're unloading the trailer, they're checking off. Yeah, I've got that. I've got that. I've got that.
Right.
So process automation would address all of that. First of all, the piece of paper can be an electronic document
Yeah.
where the flow is before the trucker gets there. That document is sent to the dock. It's not sent to a person, but it's sent to a machine. And that machine reads it and says, okay, truck ABC is on its way. It'll be here in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Now I can now set that up with however I'm going to unload it. In an automated world, that's a robot who's sitting in front of a door waiting for the truck to show up, and the robot, we're not quite there yet, but that's a perfect world scenario. So all of this stuff now, I've got the information way in advance. I can prepare for whatever I've got to do to process that. I've eliminated 2 or 3 pieces of paper. So that's one example. Another example is in the import world. So I one of the divisions that I run is a drayage division. It's basically picking up containers from the port, picking up and returning containers from the port. So there's a document that's called the delivery order, and that delivery order has all the information on it that you want for what the status of that container is. It's coming from a city in China, and it's coming to Long Beach, California, and here's what's on it. Here's all the relevant information. So a lot of freight forwarders and a lot of customs brokers will actually email. They used to fax it, believe it or not, but now they email it to you in a PDF. So some clerk at a desk has got to click on an email, open up the document, print the document, make 3 copies of it. And then 1 copy goes to the dispatcher, 1 copy is kept by the customer service person, and then 1 copy goes into an archive. So that, I mean, when I started at Weber,
Yeah.
everybody had piles of paper all over their desk. And in my opinion, anytime you have paper on your desk, that is a problem because papers get lost. It stacks up. I don't know about you, but sometimes things just stack up. You don't even know what's in the pile.
Yeah.
So I eliminated all that. If you walk through any one of my buildings today,
Okay.
you won't see pieces of paper on anybody's desks.
Nice. Okay. And how did you manage that, Gary? How did you eliminate paperwork?
Sure. I automated everything. So
Okay.
and when I say everything, literally from the point of what I described to you in that dock scenario, the warehouse, the guy shows up, the deliverer comes in through OCR reading, embedded within our TMS, Transportation Management System.
Yeah.
It reads the document, pulls all the requisite information on, populates fields inside of that TMS. So now we have a visible we have a screen of what's going on.
Yeah.
That automatically gets pushed off to whatever process they've got to do, whether it's you got to check availability, you've got to look at all the clearances. So every process all along that way is now completely automated to the point where used to hand a piece of paper to a driver, that no longer happens. So it's now a driver now has a tablet, right? They have a cell phone. Everybody's got a cell phone. So it's pushed to the cell phone. The driver looks at it. He says, yes, I got it. Or even sometimes he doesn't need to do that. I'll tell you that in a second. Everything's automatically there. So the driver gets it. He doesn't, in the scenario that I've just recently put together, the driver doesn't even have to acknowledge it because we know it was sent. We have a read confirmation. Then the driver starts driving. We know that driver has it. So once he depart, we've geofenced everything.
Mm,
So he leaves the yard, there's a status update. So again, everything that we were looking at pieces of paper before,
yeah.
it's completely automated.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is fairly tech forward. Uh,
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
and would you say this is kind of unique to Weber as a company, or do you see applications around the industry or?
Yeah, so again, transportation's kind of in the dark ages when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Most trucking companies don't do this kind of stuff. Most companies still live on an Excel spreadsheet or still have pieces of paper around.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit forward thinking in that sense. But the larger companies, the big multinational 3PLs, they most of their stuff is automated.
Mm,
Well, okay. Some of their stuff is automated.
yeah. That's I see.
But if you just take this concept and expand it into even larger companies or smaller companies,
Yeah.
the efficiencies gained is in the, I don't know, my guess is hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh, wow. And by automating a lot of this paperwork, the kind of outcomes you see, how is that usually measured? Can you deliver faster? Is that usually how it's measured because of this?
Yeah. Yeah. So just the process before, like I said, you print out a piece of paper, you hand it to two different people essentially, and you stick one in a file drawer. So there's a time savings there, right? So no, I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
You used to hand a piece of paper to a driver, and he would, do whatever the piece of paper. And then every time he had to leave, he would have to call in. Hey, I'm leaving. Hey, I'm coming in. So the time savings alone and what we've saved,
Yeah.
as an example, that delivery order process used to take per delivery order about 20 minutes,
Okay.
soup to nuts,
Wow.
beginning to end.
Mhm.
So we've eliminated that. So there just on one piece of paper, we've saved 20 minutes,
Yeah.
and we do hundreds of transactions every day. And so we've taken a department, and this is kind of the bad side, if you will. We've taken a department that was 3 times the size that it is now,
Oh, wow.
and eliminated. Well, we just never hired more people, but
Okay.
we've grown almost 2.5 times in that period. So we have a fraction of what we had when we started,
Mhm.
and we've grown pretty significantly over the last 2 or 3 years.
Got it. Okay.
That's the value proposition, is
Yeah.
that those rote things that people do, all the clerical level stuff,
Yeah.
a lot of that can be automated.
Yeah.
And the now look, it's always bad data. If data in and data out, if it's bad data, it's going to be that bad data. So we try to eliminate that as well. And that's the big challenge with when you're trying to automate things, is that you still sometimes get bad data. And that's not necessarily human fault. It could be a machine fault, just interpretation. I thought that was a P, but it turns out it was a 9.
Yeah. Got it. And when you go down an initiative to automate workflows like this, do you, have an internal team that does this? Do you buy a tool that helps you with it? Do you go to a vendor to custom make it? How do you kind of solve?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of all of that. So I use my drayage division as my test lab, if you will. And I use our transportation management system. The perfect transportation management system is an ecosystem, right? So through bolt-on, through API or some form of integration, I want these other pieces, most likely another piece of software somewhere. It bolts onto that, and they both talk to each other in a very efficient way. So it's a little bit of that. Some of it is just in order to come up with these things, that's the operations team,
Yeah.
because they're the boots on the ground. They see this stuff every day. So we regularly talk about, okay, so what else can we do? What else can we automate? So the idea comes from that. And then it's the next level is, can we build it ourselves? Do we need to build it or buy it? And buying it, to your point, is a vendor. It's a third party person. And I know a few people that we call them the tech bros in California. I know a few of those guys. And so sometimes I'll just reach out to them and say, hey, I got this problem.
Yeah.
What do you solve this problem for me?
Mhm.
And then, so, we've actually, a couple of other people that I've worked with in the past, they've developed software companies that help us to solve those problems.
That's fantastic. Okay. And uh, the other thing I was curious about
Yeah.
was, you have a software layer and you've done a bunch of proactive work to automate a lot of these things using RPA and stuff like that. Where do you see the new flavor of AI helping, like the generative AI that we've been hearing of in the last two years? Uh, your business, where do you see that playing a role? Does it play a role right now?
It does. I mean, if you asked me that same question maybe a year or two ago, I would say not quite ready yet. But I think in 2025, I think it's going to play a bigger role because I think that the learning has become more robust. It's more intelligent than it was because building a model doesn't happen overnight, right? Because you have to train the model,
Yeah.
and I think that the training element is more advanced than it was in the past. So I think AI right now, AI plays a sort of role. I mean, AI is embedded in whether we know it or not. AI is embedded in a lot of the stuff that we use on a daily basis.
Sure.
If you Google search now, Google searches Bard will, that sits behind the scenes. But AI, the real role of AI in all of this is I think there's a general fear that AI is going to take over the world at some point. The machines will run the world. Well, right now I'm not convinced that that's going to happen. But the real role of AI is as that, as Microsoft has coined it, it's a co-pilot. It sits on your shoulder and it helps you to go through your day in a more efficient manner, whether it's writing your email, whether it's putting together presentations or it's a lot of the things that were very time consuming in the past
Yeah.
that it can now help, and it helps you think.
Yeah.
So since I've been using AI tools,
Yeah.
um, I think differently now because it's really about in the AI tools, it's really about the prompt. Is
Yeah.
how do you write an effective prompt in order to get the results that you want?
Yeah.
So it helps people to think differently. And I think, in my opinion, it helps you to think smarter,
Yeah.
more critically. Um, so that's the role that it's becoming more and more prevalent in this world. And I think as most companies will adopt this to some extent, I think that transportation and third-party logistics, they may still be behind the times, but as long as I'm around, I will push that envelope.
Okay. Got it. And why do you think transportation and logistics tend to be behind the times? Is the value difficult to see? Does it take time for the value to be seen, or?
Well, so it's a little bit of that. I mean, it's a little bit of industrial style thinking. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because it works.
Yeah.
Trucking, transportation, those companies, for the most part, they're profitable, right? So, you don't want to upset the apple cart. Why fix something that ain't broke?
Right.
Um, and part of it is that believe it or not, it's transportation's simple, right? You pick something up, it's in a trailer, you have a truck, you drive it from point A to point B or point B to point C, etc. It's simple, right? It's very linear. But particularly in supply chain logistics and more specifically ocean logistics, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
And so in order to fix a lot of those moving parts,
Yeah.
you have to address them very effectively.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
When I've had these discussions in the past, it's the easiest and most complicated business that I've ever been in because there's so many different stakeholders.
Yeah.
There's, at the operations level, those people have to make decisions they've got to consider everything.
Yeah.
What's the weather like? What is the terminals like? So it's a plethora of things that you have to solve for.
Yeah.
So when you have a big problem that has a lot of variables,
Yeah.
it's not precise.
Yeah.
So it's getting there, but
Yeah.
it's not precise.
Makes sense. Yeah. But before preparing for this podcast, my only other exposure to logistics was I recently read this book by this kind of investor slash operator called Brad Jacob. Uh,
Mhm.
Exo, I mean, he has a, Exo
Yeah,
Logistics,
Bradley Jacobs is famous for XPO. Yes.
yeah, XPO. And,
Yeah.
I think his latest initiative is uh, supply chain for kind of home construction goods. That's kind of the latest thing he's into.
Yeah.
And, and,
Yeah.
and I'm curious, are there, I mean, are there niches like that which are huge by itself and have very different requirements from what you do at Weber? Is that how the industry is usually
Oh,
operating?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I think the application there is, I mean, that's a great example. I mean, home building or just construction period.
Yeah,
It's another example of one of those very manual. You got to get a guy with a hammer, and you got a hammer and a nail and a piece of wood,
yeah,
and now you're in the construction business.
yeah,
Um, but there's so many moving parts to it. There's the engineering component of it. There's the architecture part of it. And there's so much that goes into that.
yeah,
And if you can solve for all of those different problems, so if you just, I mean, you can think of in your mind. I mean,
yeah,
you're a tech guy. So think in your mind of anything that's manual today.
yeah,
Um, Driving, right? You got to get in the car, you push the accelerator pedal, and you go, right? Super simple. But again, there's a lot of moving parts to that. So
yeah,
that's why uh, autonomous cars are now kind of a sexy thing. So
yeah,
you think of anything in the past that was, mostly a simple business that is highly manual,
yeah,
and then how can technology, AI specifically, how can it solve for that?
yeah.
And
Got it.
then now you're in business.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. And when you walked us through the entire workflows that you're automating at Weber, do you usually start with a point solution, or do you really need the end-to-end to be automated before people can see value of it? I mean,
Yeah.
uh,
So it's a little bit of both, right? You start with a problem statement. I have a problem where that I need to solve,
mhm,
and it could be a big problem, could be a small problem,
yeah,
and then the practical flow of that is the next thing. Okay, well, so what do I do today?
yeah,
What's my process today?
yeah,
And so that's a process flow, right? That's an end-to-end, using your term, that's an end-to-end process examination.
yeah,
What do I do today? Don't leave anything out, even if you think it's stupid
yeah,
or irrelevant. Write up a process flow.
yeah,
And then from the process flow, you do a gap analysis.
yeah,
Like, okay, so this is what I know of it today.
yeah,
What do I want it to look like? What's my initial problem statement? What do I want it to look like?
yeah,
And then you insert that into your document and say, here's where the gaps are.
mhm,
And these are the problems that I need to solve. In order for this to be perfect,
yeah,
I need to solve all of these problems.
yeah,
And so it's a very logical progression
yeah,
to the point where, okay, now I have something that sort of looks like something better, faster, cheaper.
yeah,
Now I need to build it.
right,
How do I build it?
yeah, makes sense, makes sense. And you go through, you have a list of problems, you go through your problems. Do you think of these problems in terms of bets? You say, I'm, betting on these 7 problems, 2 will work, 3 may not work, and 1 will work really well. Is that how you think
Yeah.
about it? Or yeah,
It's a little bit like that. I'm more practical. I mean, you can't see, but I've got a grease board behind me, and that's how I think. My brain, if my brain has an idea, I go through it on the grease board, and if it sticks for 2 weeks and I do nothing about it, then it's not worth it. That's not worth my time.
yeah,
Um, so so I try to personally, I try to come up with concepts that are immediate problems
yeah,
that can be solved uh, in either an incremental way, like phase one is X, phase two is X plus one, etc. So, or because if I'm just throwing ideas on the board,
yeah,
I could do that all day long, and it's not going to be an effective use of my time.
yeah, yeah,
So I want to solve the problems that I know that are real problems.
yeah,
And a lot of times that it's not original thought. A lot of times it's, conversation I may have with an entry level clerk or a senior executive. It
got it. Okay.
I
And
hope that answers your question. I'm not sure if I did or not.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
Goes through kind of your gut feeling of how you prioritize these things. And
Yeah.
when you're kind of going through these automation exercises, you're dealing with the technology teams, the programmers, right? What do
Yep.
you wish they knew about your role that they don't bother to ask or go into and things like that?
Yeah. So really good question. I mean, great question, actually.
Okay.
Um, so I work for a start. I've worked for a couple startups in my life,
Yeah.
and the startups are um, they come in different packages, right? And so in one example,
Mm.
we had the product people, we had the engineers, we had the data scientists, and then we had the operators.
Yeah.
Because essentially the problem we were trying to solve
Yeah.
was how do we make the operations more efficient?
Yeah.
So we had our lab rats, if you will, were the operations folks.
Yeah.
And our everybody else, and literally you could see the separation in an office. The engineers and all the the geeks sat on the left side, all the operators sat on the right side,
Yeah.
and they never interacted.
Yeah.
So what do I wish was how? I wish that in collaboration with the people that actually do the work,
Yeah.
that engineers build stuff that are relevant.
Yeah.
So I'm real big on user interface and user experience.
Yeah.
If I have to use a piece of software, it's
Yeah.
got to be a good experience for me.
Mhm.
I want the user interface to be super simple. I want the user experience. It's intuitive. It's all those great things that I want uh, that should come with the operator's mind. Like I'm the guy that's going to be using it, so I want it easy for me.
Yeah.
And the engineer has to be part, engineer, part psychologist, and part vision seer, if you will. So she have to get it right in order to build that one thing. And I think that's one of the biggest gaps we have is that there's lots of software engineers out there. There's lots of, whatever engineer, put a word in front of engineer.
Yeah.
But they're not solving the problem that's a real problem.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I look for, even when I'm talking about investing in companies.
Yeah.
Solve the problem that's a real problem. Don't create a solution where there's no problem,
Yeah.
and do it right,
Yeah.
and do it and make sure that you have if you're sitting in the seat of the person actually using it,
Yeah.
build it that way.
Yeah. No, it's a fantastic point that you made, which is solve a real problem, and
Yeah,
don't go around searching for a problem with the solution that you have. That
yeah,
point is so important, Gary. If you don't mind, if I just double click on that, could you
sure.
give an instance of what is a real problem that ought to have been solved, and people totally miss it because of lack of communication or curiosity, and they go solve something else that's not really not that important. Like anything comes to
Yeah,
your mind?
yeah. There's and I hope I don't offend any of your audience,
No, no.
but there was a bunch of companies, probably maybe 10 years ago, 5, 10 years ago, where they were going to solve the drayage problem, right? The port drayage problem. And they were going to build an app that a driver would use. They were going to build an app that a customer would use. And then magically, drivers and customers were going to flock to this one app, and they were all going to use it, and the world was going to be all right. But behind the scenes, what was really going on was there's actually a lot of people that are manually creating things. So the problem that they were trying to solve was not a real problem. Drivers don't care. Customers don't care. Customers care about those things we talked about earlier, right? They pick it up on time, deliver it on time, bill me correctly, all those things. They don't care if you do it on stone tablets.
Yeah.
Drivers, just give me the work. I don't care how you do it.
Yeah.
Fax it to me. They don't care. It's work. The real problem that they should have been solving is efficiency. The things that we've talked about here
Yeah.
is that if you started with the premise
Yeah.
that I'm going to build something that's $1 billion scale,
Yeah.
but I can't hire a single employee,
Mhm.
build that.
Mhm.
Because what ends now, obviously that's not possible, right? Um, but if you go with that North Star, you're building something where you can now you can make some real decisions. Like I've created this super efficient thing that works 100% of the time. And guess what? I can do it with very low overhead. And now I can say, you know what, drivers, I'm going to pay you more money.
Yeah.
Customers, I'm going to charge you less.
Mm.
Or I'm going to be the selfish guy and I'm going to retain all of my earnings and I'm going to be a, super, Elon Musk or Bill Gates or you name it. So that's the real problem that needed to be solved. And I would always scratch my head like, you guys aren't seeing it. And there was lots of these companies that did it. I don't need to mention the names, but there were lots of companies that was like, you guys are solving the wrong problem, man. It's really simple.
Yeah. From, just hearing you talk, it almost seems as if the real problem are just like the traditional simple problems.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yes. Stop overthinking. I actually have a t-shirt. It's one of my favorite t-shirts. Is it, wait, let me overthink this. Don't overthink it.
Right.
What's the real problem here?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hire 100 data scientists, people, and you can hire every engineer on the planet.
Yeah.
All you're doing is spending money because you've got this thing, and like solve the real problem.
Right. Makes sense. And if a team, were to come to you with skills on AI to help automation in logistics and transportation,
Yeah.
what would you look for? How do you kind of proceed, not proceed? How do you think about that?
So it's no different than when a customer is looking for 3PL services, right? Um, lots of people have AI skills. Lots
Yeah.
of companies have AI skills. They're popping up in by the hundreds every single day.
Yeah.
So I look for unique differentiators. Obviously, industry knowledge. If it's something more specialized, I want to know they've had to solve these problems in the past,
Yeah.
or at least come up with solutions
Yeah.
in the past. So they've got to have differentiation, experience, understanding of their clients.
Yeah.
There's a lot of companies. I get approached all the time, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I'm going to get approached much more now that we've done this podcast.
Mhm.
But don't kind of what we just talked about is you guys are super, super smart, whatever title you've got or whatever background or education you've got. But if you don't understand what the problem is,
Yeah.
then you're not adding any value to me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's impressive to talk to you and we can geek out over, whatever, AI, quantum computing, blockchain. We can geek out of that all day long.
Yeah.
That's a nice conversation to have.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm going to say, have a great day. And that's as far as the conversation is going to go, or the relationship's going to go.
Makes sense. Yeah. That's well said. And just kind of tangentially, Gary, I was curious, in the trucking industry, is training or skilling, is that a problem? How do you solve that?
Yes,
What do you
absolutely.
train on?
And I don't want to characterize people in trucking, but I guess I'm going to do it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
If you talk to most people in trucking,
Yeah.
there's some exceptions,
Mhm.
but they fell into the business.
Mm.
I mean, my background's actually in finance.
Yeah.
So I worked on Wall Street for 2 years.
Mhm.
I'm a numbers guy. I probably should have gone to engineering school, but again, I'm lazy, so I didn't. So I fell into this business as something that I was only going to do for a little while I figured out what I'm going to do next.
Okay.
And so I did it for a long time.
Yeah.
So people don't, it's changing a little bit because there's a lot of masters and actually PhD programs that are popping up in supply chain. But generally speaking, people come in and they're just sort of figuring this business out as they go along. Whereas somebody's an accountant, somebody wants to be an accountant. They go to school specifically to be an accountant.
Right.
Most companies don't pick from that. Most trucking companies don't pick from that. It's people that they're just trying to pay a bill. And so why am I saying all this? It's retraining the minds to think in this terms. I'm forever telling my team, continuous improvement. If you don't have a continuous improvement mindset,
Yeah.
you're not going to go very far, and
Yeah.
especially in today's world.
Yeah.
I wrote a blog not too long ago. It was somewhat titled uh, "Adapt or Die." So adapt or die. If you don't adapt, if in this industry you're not adapting to technology, then you're gonna get passed up. So that training component is huge
Yeah,
because if you have the people with the mindset of how can I do better, faster, cheaper, how
yeah,
can I continually improve,
yeah.
then you're halfway there to getting people trained properly
Makes
because
sense.
now you have willingness to learn.
Got it. And when you talk about training in the trucking industry, are you broadly referring to just fundamental problem solving skills, or are you referring to very industry specific tactical technical knowledge, or and
A
how's
little bit of both.
both? And how
Depends on the level.
okay,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
sure.
yeah, it's a little bit of both. So one of the big things over the last couple of years is that I've emphasized not only that continuous improvement mindset, but also critical thinking.
Yeah,
I mean, whether we know it or not, or whether
yeah,
we call it that or not, we use critical thinking in our everyday lives.
yeah,
Uh, we get up in the morning because we know we've got a early morning meeting, so we need to get up at a certain time, and we need to, our routine has to be followed. We get our cup of coffee, blah. So that's a path of critical thinking.
yeah,
So in when you're solving problems, the tendency is, and I'm not trying to overcharacterize, but the tendency is to rely on other people to make decisions because that's their job.
yeah,
But if everybody has that critical thinking mindset, well, uh, then problems get solved much faster. It's more efficient. Instead of waiting for one bottleneck to solve all the problems, now everybody's are problem solvers.
yeah,
So, but it takes critical thinking skills in order to get there.
yeah, yeah, okay. And a company like Weber, is there like a L&D or an instruction design team that kind of assists with something like this?
No.
No, got it.
But no, so sorry, I'm gonna say no. I said no too quick. We have a continuous improvement group
Yeah,
that are focused primarily on just that.
yeah,
Whether it's on the warehouse side or it's on the transportation side, they're focused on continuous improvement projects.
got it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And the other thing is you did some work on AI back in your college in the 80s. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think is about this time that makes it feel real? Like this is the real deal. What is it about this
Yeah.
time that makes it feel
Yeah.
real to you?
So great question. Thanks for not aging me too much. Yeah, so we talked earlier before just kind of getting to know. I did a project paper on AI in
Yeah,
19, I think it's 1984. I'm going to have to dig to find this thing. And the promise of AI then is kind of more the reality today. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that we didn't know, obviously, in 1984. In
yeah,
1984, I mean, you think about it, Microsoft and Amazon and all and Google, none of those really existed all that much. So fast forward to 2025,
yeah,
the promise of all those things are now coming to fruition.
yeah,
And so AI is actually a real thing
yeah,
today,
yeah,
and it's getting there, right? I mean, I think in the next 20 years, I think we will all be amazed at what AI has done for our lives. And we won't even notice it. It'll just be there.
right.
It's like the toaster. Like, oh, what? I have I can cook toast. And so I mean, think about how we live. I don't eat toast, but you get the point.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And just the final couple of points, Gary. One is, if you kind of had a magic wand and you could wish for this dream AI solution
Sure.
for your company, what would that look like?
Well, first of all, if I had a magic wand, I would change the collective. And I'm not speaking specifically about Weber.
Yeah,
Just understand that.
yeah,
If I had a wand and I could change the collective thinking to that, what I described before, is better, faster, cheaper, continuous improvement, process automation. If the mindset was first and foremost that,
yeah.
then we can say that's my mindset. Now let me approach my problems in a different way.
Mm,
And so now, versus before, hey, I've got this math problem. Well, where's my calculator? I've got this complex math problem. Where's my Excel workbook?
mm,
But if I change my mindset to say, I have tools that I can use and I know them because that's how I think.
Yeah.
It's really changing the mindset of the people. And whether that's a generational turnover or that's just oh crap, why didn't I think of this before? How come I didn't think of that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Because sometimes those are the things that are the catalyst behind change. But it's really just starts with that. It's if I had a magic wand, I would accelerate the mindset, the thinking of the collective group of folks. And then the full adoption with eyes wide open, because that's the other part of it.
Yeah.
When you adopt something, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to just do this."
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Chat GPT write all of my research papers, and then somebody that's super smart reads that and says, "You know what? Half of this is crap." So obviously you use Chat GPT. So it's that you got to have the critical mindset to validate that it's still correct.
Yeah.
You can't just trust it implicitly.
Yeah, makes sense. And then just finally, Gary, you're in a role at kind of one of the leading logistics companies. You run a team with hundreds of people reporting up to you. What best practices in your career do you think have got you where you are right now?
Best practices in my career. It's funny you said that because I was actually thinking of this the other day because I read a lot of LinkedIn posts and people that, the advice that people give. The biggest piece of advice that I can give anybody in this industry is have the ability to laugh at yourself. Because if you take everything so seriously, then your brain is just going to get completely jumbled up. So be able to take things at face value, be able to laugh at yourself. I mean, that really doesn't answer your question, but that's if I was giving advice to anybody, what's the best one of the best skills that I have? I don't take myself too seriously. And if I don't take myself too seriously, then my mind is open to everything. I don't have, I check my ego at the door. Everybody's as smart as I am. Most people I hope are smarter than me. If I have that mindset, then in my career, I've been successful because I'm a collaborator. Now, in my role, I have to make some pretty big decisions,
Yeah.
but I'm a collaborator. I want to listen to everybody, much like we discussed before with the engineer versus the actual user.
Yeah.
I want to be in that seat. Because that's where the problems actually occur.
Yeah.
And so those are the problems that I want to solve. So I free myself up. I free my mind up to be open to anything, to any new idea. It's a little unique to a lot of people, and most people think very linearly. I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
If I could diagram my brain, it's a scattergram.
And when you say the scattergram, you mean?
I'm not. So I'm yeah. I'm not an airhead. So scattergram is that I'm not thinking from point A to point B. I'm thinking of, okay, so how do I really get there? How do I get from point A to point B? And we talked about a little bit before the process. First, you start with a problem statement, and then you move to the end. But a lot of people think in terms of, well, I solved this problem before. That's the solution that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So maybe it is. Maybe that is the best solution. But the way that I look at things is like I want to question it. I want to like this is how I got to work before. But what if I turned down this one street?
Yeah.
Would that shave some time off my day or that time?
Okay, that's a very first principles way of looking at it. So yeah, no, that's fantastic. On that note, Gary, this has been super insightful. Thank you so much for taking time.
Sure. All right, Benny. Thank you so much.